Adi Paschata Deshe Tarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are discussing two verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 8th chapter, verse number 23 and 24. So I will share my screen so that we all can see. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.23. I'll recite the verse, synonyms, translation, read the purport. We will discuss this verse and then go over to the next verse, which is verse number 24. Yatha Rishikesha Khalena Devaki Kamsena Ruddhati Chiram Sucharpita Vimochitaham Sasahatmaja Vibho Tvayaiva Nathena Muhurvipadganat. Synonyms: Yatha, as it were; Rishikesha, the master of the senses; Khalena, by the envious; Devaki, Devaki, the mother of Sri Krishna; Kamsena, by King Kamsa; Ruddha, imprisoned; Ati Chiram, for a long time; Shucha Arpita, distressed; Vimochita, released; Aham cha, also myself; Saha Atmaja, along with my children; Vibho, O great one; Tvaya eva, by your lordship; Nathena, as the protector; Muhu, constantly; Vipat Ganat, from a series of dangers. Translation: O Rishikesha, master of the senses and lord of the lords, you have released your mother, Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious king Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devaki, the mother of Krishna and sister of King Kamsa, was put into prison along with her husband Vasudev because the envious king was afraid of being killed by Devaki's eighth son, Krishna. He killed all the sons of Devaki who were born before Krishna, but Krishna escaped the danger of child slaughter because he was transferred to the house of Nanda Maharaj, Lord Krishna's foster father. Kunti Devi, along with her children, was also saved from a series of dangers. But Kunti Devi was shown far more favor because Lord Krishna did not save the other children of Devaki, whereas he saved the children of Kunti Devi. This was done because Devaki's husband Vasudeva was living, whereas Kunti Devi was a widow and there was none to help her except Krishna. The conclusion is that Krishna endows more favor to a devotee who is in greater dangers. Sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers because, in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. The more the attachment is there for the Lord, the more success is there for the devotee. Okay, so we will discuss this verse. Okay, how do I stop sharing now? It keeps happening every time because I signed out.
Meeting controls, Prabhu. Right one, you can. The right one, see that. There on top, you will click on, maybe see on the top, you will see. If you just take your mouse to.
No, this is meeting control and there is nothing there.
Wow. I can.
Maybe I'll sign back in.
Lingaraj Prabhu, you can try
I can
to
do that.
take
I'll do, Prabhu. I will do it. I'm looking. Oh, I must stop participant sharing.
Okay, I got it.
Right.
Back. So, as we discussed, as we are reading this Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.23, I actually got the a lecture from Srila Prabhupada, so that helped me prepare for this. And I'll mostly go what Prabhupada spoke. So this verse, from as we can see from Kunti Devi's prayer, I was not able to attend the other previous verses by other devotees when we began this chapter because His Holiness Ramapad Maharaj was here and in Palatine, so I was going there for his classes. This verse 1.8.23 it is describing Krishna's activities and Kunti Devi's taking shelter of Krishna. So she is saying that you have released your mother Devki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. So she's talking about the protection or the mercy potency of Krishna that he says in Bhagavad Gita. But before that, we will go to understand like the way Srila Prabhupada began his lecture was that one who knows Krishna's birth and activities get the liberation, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tatvatah Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So it is so important to understand the birth and activities of Krishna. Simply by understanding his activities or how he takes birth and understanding these pastimes, one can attain his abode. And that's what Krishna is saying himself in Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Another point to be noted here is that since Krishna has his activities, and he himself says that one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. So as soon as someone has an activity, we have to understand that he has a form, because people say there are some sections of society which say that God does not have a form, or he is nirakar. So how can nirakar act in so many different ways, so many wonderful ways? And we have so many scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, all the different Puranas, which are full of activities of God, of Krishna in his various incarnations. So, what are Krishna's activities? That's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita in the same chapter, in fourth chapter, just before this Janma Karma Chame Divyan verse. Krishna is speaking in 4.8, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. So here Krishna says he has three different activities: to deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, and to re-establish the principles of religion. So in this verse, we can see Kunti Devi is saying that he gave protection to Kunti Devi along with her children in many different circumstances, which we will discuss a little bit more in the next verse 1.8.24, which is talking about the different kind of protection that Krishna gave to her and her children, the Pandavas. But interesting point that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport is that he did not protect Devaki's sons. So Krishna was the eighth child, and as we all know, she had seven uh, children before the eighth child was born, and they were all killed mercilessly by Kamsa in the prison house. And the reason why Prabhupada explains is he did not protect Devaki's son because Mother Devaki's husband Vasudev was with her. So she had protection from her husband. But in case of Kunti Devi, she did not have her husband. And not only that, but her relatives who were elders were also against her and her children. So she, if we look at in that perspective, she had no protection really. So she was in charge of protecting her children, bringing them up, and all of that. And therefore, Krishna is protecting her. She is getting more protection from Krishna than Devaki. I thought that was a very interesting point and a point to be noted. So Srila Prabhupada says that in the purport, sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers because in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. The more the attachment is there for the Lord, the more success is there for the devotee. Krishna gives more favor to a devotee who is in greater dangers. So that is the conclusion of this particular section, that Krishna gives more favor to a devotee who is in a greater danger. Now, Krishna's ability to protect, and we also try to protect, or we also try to control or do so many things because we are part and parcel of Krishna. We have those tendencies as well, but we have to understand Krishna's position and our position. So Krishna's position is supreme. It's not like us, the living entity, who are under the clutches of the material energy. We are in fact being controlled by the material energy, most most of the population, 99.9 plus percentage of the population. And Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita 3.27, Prakrite kriya manani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we living entities think that we are doing, or I am doing, I am responsible for such and such things, or I created this, or because of me these things are happening. But Krishna very clearly says that we are bewildered, or the living entity or the spirit soul is bewildered by the influence of the false ego. What is that false ego? False ego is these very things: I, me, mine, etc. And we are thinking ourselves to be the doer of activities, but are actually controlled or carried out by the three modes of material nature. So it's very clear that we are in control of the material nature. But Krishna's position is not like that. That's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Mama Maya Duratya, Mama Maya. So he says that this is my energy, my material nature. So we have to really understand our position. Again, I'm following Srila Prabhupada's lecture, and this is the series he went. So we have to understand our position. We are like a spark separated from a large fire. So just like the fire has the tendency to burn a larger fire, similarly the spark which has been separated from the fire is also has the tendency to burn. So for example, when a spark comes out of the fire and falls on a piece of cloth, that small piece of cloth either gets burned, there's a hole in the cloth, or it becomes black, meaning that it burns, but not does not have the same capacity like the fire can burn. So similarly, we, the living entities, we have these spiritual qualities that Krishna has. But just like the spark loses its capacity to burn when it is separated from the fire, similarly, when we get separated from our spiritual position or from Krishna, the larger fire, we have those spiritual qualities, but they are lost, or we can understand that they are covered. And our position here in this material world, or our goal, is to revive back those qualities. That is our goal. And what is that covering? As discussed before, when we say that these spiritual qualities have been lost, or are have become covered. So what do we mean by covered? Covered means like we are covered by these upadhis, or these designations, which I just talked, like I, me, mine. Because of me this is happening, I am responsible for such and such things, and all of that. So these designations, these are the covering. Now, what is the means, or what is there a way to revive this position, or revive our original spiritual qualities? Or how do we, the next obvious question is like how, which again Srila Prabhupada very systematically in his lecture he answers. The very next topic he brings up is, in a natural flow, is how to revive this. And the answers are, again, is quoting from Bhagavad Gita 4.10. 4.10 is Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Man Maya Mam Upashritaha Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Puta Mad Bhavam Agataha. So translation is, being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So here it's significant. Krishna is saying bhavam. Yes, bhavam agata. Bhavam means many. So many persons in the past have become purified by knowledge of me. And what is that? Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, and being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me. Again, he gives uh, many solutions or many hows. So some of them are getting, we have to make effort to get to be freed from attachments, fear, anger. These are, we all know, these are built in us, in the living entities, very like tightly integrated. And the second thing that he talks about is being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Again, Kunti Devi's example comes here, absorbed in Krishna and taking refuge in Krishna. So, and Krishna says that many people in the past have using this formula, they have all attained transcendental love for me. And again, he quotes another verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 19.170. This is also a famous verse that Prabhupada quotes very often. Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So the translation of this verse is bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So I'll read the translation once again. Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So very, it's a very deep verse in the sense that we can, and very practical also actually, we can understand that when we engage ourselves in Krishna's service, automatically our senses are, they don't get time to get engaged in other material activities. So the more we engage in Krishna's service, the less chance our senses have to be engaged in other materialistic activities. And which means when the senses come in contact with the sense object, that's when the materialistic senses, they give, they uh, the desire to enjoy the different sense objects arises, and then the series follows with that. The desire is there, then there is effort to get something, and then effort means activity, and when there is activity for sense gratification, there is karma which follows, and then karma follows is the reaction of those. So when we are engaging our senses in bhakti or devotional service, we are reducing or minimizing our senses getting engaged in the material things. And there are two side effects. One is we get freed from material designations. We talked earlier that our covering uh, of the spiritual qualities is basically these designations: I, me, mine, etc., the different upadhis we have. And here in this verse, it clearly says that by engaging in bhakti or devotional service, the first thing that happens is that we get freed from material designations. And the second one is that our senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So purification means that we lose interest in the material activities, our senses being engaged in material activities, and they get dovetailed or in Krishna's service, or get engaged in Krishna's service. So both things happen simultaneously. We talked about Kunti Devi. Next point is Kunti Devi had to face so many dangers, even though she was such an exalted devotee and an aunt of Krishna. So we can understand being a mother like Devaki was, or Vasudev as a father of Krishna, or Kunti Devi as an aunt of Krishna. It's not an easy position to get. One has to, like Prabhupada has said and mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, one has to go through many lifetimes of austerities, of devotional service before they can get this position. So Kunti Devi is, we can understand from her position itself that she is an exalted devotee. Yet she had to face so many dangers. So what can we think about ourselves when any danger comes upon us? We think that, oh, the world is falling apart, everything is breaking apart, and we are the only ones who is suffering. The questions begin to come, why me? um, a lot of times in the beginning, when we begin understanding about God, we start thinking, uh, this question is very often comes like, why does good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? We all tend to think that we are good and others are bad, and when bad things are happening to us, it's the bad things happening to us, and always the grass is greener on the other side. So they are bad people, yet good things are happening to them. So it's a very common thing that we come across when we preach and when we come across different people. In fact, many of us also probably went through that. So here the lesson that Srila Prabhupada says, that the lesson for us is that what we have to get, or conclusion or lesson to be learned from this verse is that number one, Kunti Devi, even though she is such an exalted devotee, um, has such an exalted position, she has had to go through so many troubles, so many dangers throughout her life. Not just like, they were not even like small phases like we get, but pretty much throughout her life. So we should understand that when we are in danger, we should not be discouraged. So that's something for us to take away from it, that when danger comes, we should not be discouraged. We should depend on Krishna, just like Kunti Devi did. Whenever the dangers came, she depended on Krishna. We know from Bhagavad Gita, we actually not Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, this material world is full of dangers. So that's how this world is designed. I mean, the in another context, I was discussing or with another devotee that this world is full of dangers. So dangers meaning like, this world is created for the purpose of our spiritual elevation, and yet, just like we talked, we are a spark separated from the fire. So this material world acts like a prison house, yet at the same time it acts as a hospital. So this analogy has been given by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, very nicely explained that how this material world is also a prison house, because these sparks that have separated, obviously they don't have a position with the bigger fire, which means that we don't have a position now with our original spiritual place. Therefore, we have been given this place. It is compared to the prison house, but yet at the same time this is a hospital, which means that there are means of rectifying and getting out of here. It's not just one or the other, it's both, two in one. So the Bhagavatam verse is 10.14.58. It says, for those who have accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon. The ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. Their goal is Parampadam. So this is from that verse. The goal is Parampadam, or the Vaikunta, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. So, very key and critical takeaway from this verse, that like Srila Prabhupada says, Kunti Devi went through a lot of dangers, yet she depended on Krishna. And considering her position and her exalted position and her uh, exalted being an exalted devotee, she went through so many dangers. We when we come through danger, we should learn to not be discouraged. It is something that needs to be practiced, does not come automatically. But if we have these verses and these examples in front of us, which is the sole purpose of these scriptures, we can try and benefit and try not to be discouraged and take shelter of Krishna. So that is the takeaway from this. Now we'll go to the next verse, 24. I'll share my screen again. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.24. Vishan Vishan Mahagne Purushad Darshanad Asad Abhya Asad Sabha Yavanavasakritritah Mridhe Mridhe Aneka Maharatha Starto Drauni Astratash Chasmahare Abhirakshitaha. Synonyms: Vishat, from poison; Maha Agne, from the great fire; Purusha Ada, the man eaters; Darshanat, by combating; Asat, vicious; Sabhaya, assembly; Vanavasa, exiled to the forest; Krichritaha, sufferings; Mridhe Mridhe, again and again in battle; Aneka, many; Maharatha, great generals; Astrataha, weapons; Droni, the son of Dronacharya; Astrataha, from the weapon of; Cha, and; Asma, indicating past tense; Hare, O my Lord; Abhirakshitaha, protected completely. Translation: My dear Krishna, your Lordship has protected us from a poison cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashwatthama. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. The list of dangerous encounters is submitted herein. Devaki was once put into difficulty by her envious brother. Otherwise, she was well. But Kunti Devi and her sons were put into one difficulty after another for years and years together. They were put into trouble by Duryodhana and his party due to the kingdom, and each and every time the sons of Kunti were saved by the Lord. Once Bhima was administered poison in a cake. Once they were put into the house made of shellac and set afire. And once Draupadi was dragged out, and attempts were made to insult her by stripping her naked in the vicious assembly of the Kurus. The Lord saved Draupadi by supplying an immeasurable length of cloth, and Duryodhana's party failed to see her naked. Similarly, when they were exiled in the forest, Bhima had to fight with the man eater demon Hidimba Rakshasa, but the Lord saved him. So it was not finished there. After all these tribulations, there was the great battle of Kurukshetra. And Arjuna had to meet such great generals as Drona, Bhishma, and Karna, all powerful fighters. And at last, even when everything was done away with, there was the Brahmastra released by the son of Dronacharya to kill the child within the womb of Uttara. And so the Lord saved the only surviving descendant of the Kurus, Maharaj Parikshit. So, continuing from the previous verse, this verse basically describes all the different uh, troubles or different dangers that Kunti Devi and her sons, the Pandavas, went through. And like I was mentioning before, and Prabhupada also says the same, confirms here that Kunti Devi went through these difficult times or difficulties or dangers years and years together. And when Prabhupada here compares that with Devki, so Devki was once put into difficulty by her envious brother, but otherwise she was with her husband. And even though in the prison house, it's very difficult for us to compare, but eh, we can understand that she was with her husband in a prison house, so that was also a danger. But when compared to what Kunti Devi went through right from the beginning, and Prabhupada mentions here, till the end, even after the end of the war, there were dangers one after the other. And being in the prison house is definitely not pleasant, but going through these different, one after the different kind of dangers is really, so you don't know what to expect, what's coming next kind of. So here, one at a time, Prabhupada begins with or the verse begins with Bhima. So we know the story when Bhima was administered poison in the cake, and he was saved from that. And then they were put into the house of lac or shellac. So that was also a what do we call, the plan, or the evil plan of the Kauravas, or the son of Dhritarashtra. But again, in the form of Vidura, they got help. Vidura knew about this vicious or this evil plan, and he helped them get out from there. But at the same time, Duryodhan had come to know that Vidura had had helped them. So again, he was not pleased with that, and that was the politics there. But Krishna helped them, and they escaped the fire. That's the main thing from this. Next is Draupadi. So he brings Draupadi was dragged into the assembly of the Kurus. So we know this also, that the Pandavas or or Yudhishthir Maharaj had engaged in a gambling match with the Kauravas, and they were cheated, and Yudhishthir Maharaj lost everything, and at last he had put his wife or their wife in the gambling, and he lost that as well. So then Draupadi was dragged out by Karna and Dushasan, I believe. Yes. So they had dragged Draupadi out, and Prabhupada was explaining that they had tried to disrobe her, and she was trying to protect herself. But until she was trying to protect herself, she was in danger, and there was every possibility that she she could get disrobed. But when she realized that there was no help and she was helpless, she stopped protecting herself, and she threw her arms in the air and called out to Krishna, if you so desire, please help me from this great insult in this assembly of all the great men and elderly men, and all of them sitting there. And Krishna helped in that helpless condition. He gave unlimited cloth. The sari became long, and they got tired of trying to pull the sari. It kept on coming and coming. So in unimaginable ways, Krishna helped. Next is similarly, when they were exiled in the forest, Bhima had to fight with man-eater demon Hidamba Rakshasa, but the Lord saved him. So the after the gambling match, things were not over. So they had to go through 12 years of exile in the forest. I mean, that itself is a great danger or so much of trouble. Being kshatriyas or being in the princes, they were used to living a good life, or the life of princes, and yet they had to go to the forest. But not just that, they had so many dangers while living in the forest as well. And the example here is fighting with the great man-eater demon Hidimba Rakshasa. But again, Krishna was there to help them, to help Bhima. So again, Kunti Devi's sons were protected. And after these tribulations, there was this great battle of Kurukshetra. So it was, we all know this Mahabharat, a great war. And in this verse, it's mentioned Aneka Maharatha. So they were protected from Aneka Maharatha, and meaning many Maharathas. So I came across this lecture by Srila Prabhupada where he explains that there were different kinds of generals. Here, Maharatha, he's translating as great generals, but there are different kind of generals in the Vedic culture. Those who could fight with one charioteer, those who could fight with two, those who could fight with 10 charioteers. So they all had different names. Just like we have different names today in the military, some different generals, and they get different stars on their shoulders, like that. So Maharatha meant a person or a general who could fight with 1,000 charioteers, 1,000 generals at at the same time. So like that, there were many Maharathas, and they had to fight in that. So the examples that Prabhupada gave was Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and Karna. They were all Maharathas, meaning that they were like they all had the capacity to fight with hundreds and thousands of charioteers at one point at the same time. And Krishna helped them. So Arjuna was able to kill all of them in the war of Kurukshetra with the help of Krishna. So with that being done, the war was finally over, and one would think that the war is over, Yudhishthir Maharaj would become the king, and things would finally get better for them. But no, Ashwathama, the son of Dronacharya, was envious by nature through his mentality. So we finished this chapter, the previous chapter, in Srimad Bhagavatam, which was all about that story. So we know how Ashwathama tried to take revenge of his father's death by killing the sons of Pandava, and he took in a very gruesome way while they were sleeping. He mercilessly separated the heads of the sons of Pandavas in their sleep, and then he took those heads and took it to Duryodhana. Duryodhana was in hiding because his waist was broken in the battle with Bhima, and he was pretty much um, what is that? He was not paralyzed, but he was not able to walk, or he was in a very bad condition. So he was in a hiding, and Ashwathama took the heads of the sons of Pandava and took them to Duryodhana, saying that I have killed the Pandavas. Here are their 5 heads. So seeing that, Duryodhana became very happy that finally, even though they lost the war, but if the Pandavas are dead, then that was his goal. But he had a way to test it. So Prabhupada was explaining, he pressed the head of the heads of I mean the heads, and they burst or something like that. So that was a test, and it failed the test. So he immediately understood that these are not the heads of the Pandavas, but probably the heads of the Pandava's son. So that made him very sad. Being a Kshatriya, even though his enmity was with the Pandavas, but in being a Kshatriya, he was very concerned that the Kuru dynasty should go on. And by killing the 5 sons of the Pandavas, he knew that this is the end of the dynasty, which he did not want. And he was very sad. He with this, and because of this, he died after that. And Ashwatthama, being envious in nature, he knew that one more um, one in the dynasty of the Kuru, one more person had the chance to continue the dynasty, and that was the unborn child in the wife of Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna. Her name was Uttara. So she had a son in her. His Parikshit Maharaj yet to be born, and Ashwathama, he had already used the Brahmastra before, and he used it again um, to kill the child of Uttara and Abhimanyu, to completely block the progression of this lineage of the Pandavas. Such was his enmity, and yet that was a great danger. There was no help available, and Uttara called out to Krishna, and Krishna helped by entering into the womb and blocking the Brahmastra. So the Lord saved the only surviving descendant of the Kurus, Maharaj Parikshit. And because Maharaj Parikshit came, he was a great general. He ruled just like Yudhishthir Maharaj did, and because of Parikshit Maharaj, we got the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the lineage, the descendants continued. But these were the dangers that Kunti Devi went through. So I'll conclude here. This particular verse was just an extension of the previous verse, where it's described the different, in a very brief way, the different dangers that Kunti Devi went through. And through these brief description, we can understand that it was no ordinary dangers, like extreme dangers that any ordinary person would not be able to take it. Yet because she was such a great devotee, exalted devotee, and she had this exalted position of aunt of Krishna, she was able to undergo these different dangers and take shelter of Krishna. And Krishna not only protected her, but her sons, and not only her sons, but son's son, Parikshit Maharaj also. So that's the takeaway from these two verses. So I invite any discussions on these two verses. We have a few minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhu. These verses are so elevated in one sense that we can't even imagine someone going through such kind of dangers. But then we can see Kunti Maharani's mood, how she's not afraid of all those things. In fact, she is actually asking for more. And you were mentioning that point. When we have greater danger, we have greater protection from the Lord. So that point is something touched my heart. And I was thinking, when things go a little turbulent, I mean, of course, Krishna Mercy, we don't have, in no way we have those kind of dangers. Even little things, we get so perturbed and say, Krishna, why I can't, focus on my sadhana or my services. Please take away these troubles. So this is actually inspiring that in spite of whatever turbulent situations life may throw, if we can remember that Krishna's protection is there, and when we feel that the intensity of the troubling situation is more, that we have deeper protection of Krishna available. It's just that I have to turn towards that and then seek such kind of shelter. So that was very inspiring, Prabhu. And some curiosity question, Prabhu. I was thinking about this time frame of this when you're describing these Mahabharata incidents. I don't know if you or anyone knows. We know Krishna has stayed for 120 some years.
125, yeah.
125. And when the Kurukshetra battle happened, was it like he was 100 plus years, something?
I don't know the exact answer for that, but I think so. If anybody else knows the answer,
I was just
please.
Curious, Prabhu. We
Yeah.
were hearing the class.
Mataji, Aditya is saying after Kurukshetra was 36 years after that he left this world.
So he was less than 100 then.
Yes,
okay.
Hare Krishna. I heard in a lecture that he was 90 some years old.
Yeah. So both of them, they are the same thing. If after Mahabharata it was 36, then 125 minus 36. So I think
89.
Yeah, 89, 90. So yeah, they both match around. So.
Okay, sure, Prabhu. Yeah, I was just wondering, Yudhishthir Maharaj, like, was it like hundreds of years of ruling, or because the whole thing was very less, right? There is this beautiful description of his ruling and everything.
Yes.
When Krishna left, they also retired and left. So I was just wondering in terms of the time frame.
Yeah, he didn't rule for too long. I just came across that few days back, but it was a very short. It wasn't like many years.
I think it is around same time, Mataji, 30 to 40 years, 36
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Or maybe in 20s is what I remember. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, Prabhu. Thank you
He
so
was the
much.
king until after the war, right, Prabhu? I mean, from then, from that perspective, because he was the king until Krishna left this world, right? Because after that only they will leave to the forest, right? I mean, Himalayas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, Prabhu. Yeah, so that 36 years probably, yeah. Sure. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, Nandu and myself, we were hearing the class and then discussing so how old and how much time. Thank you,
I
Prabhu.
don't remember, Mataji. Aditya is answering to me.
Thank you.
Our children are helping us. Very good. This is what we want.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Hello,
Hare Krishna,
Prabhu.
bro. Please accept mine to all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much for a beautiful description about Kunti Maharani and how all the troubles she faced. Prabhuji, some curiosity question I got, and I'm not sure, is we know as we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we see each personality gaining strength or, through a mentor, like Narada Muni through the Bhakti Vedantas, Vyasadev through Narada Muni and whatnot. I was just wondering, where did Kunti Maharani, get that inspiration from?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But like Prabhupada says here, and you probably you yourself can answer your question, Prabhu. But she is an exalted devotee, and she has an exalted position. Prabhupada mentions these two things. So her position being an aunt of Krishna, just like Devaki and Vasudev, or other Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, they all have exalted positions. So I'm not sure that they need any such inspiration. They already have an exalted position, so that would be my thought process. But anything other than that, if somebody else wants to share, please do so.
Yes, Prabhuji. The reason why I got the question is, she's so many troubles and whatnot, right? And it starts with a very early age when she gives birth to Karna itself, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, solely trying, staying Krishna consciousness. I know she's exalted, but I was just thinking, often we like to derive that encouragement or, like a reveal in confidence or anything like that, right? I was just curious. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, I mean, there is no evidence from the scriptures, right? Like as you know, that she had any such mentors or guides. But I mean, it should make sense that when these are there for setting examples. So, and the examples that Krishna wants to set for us is that we depend on Krishna through a guide or through a spiritual master, and both. But in this case, it's a very good question. Maybe we can ask further. And you're right from the beginning, from the birth of Karna, she went through distress after distress. Even the Pandavas, I mean, with Pandu also, she could not have children. So even though they are called Pandu Putra, but she had them through different personalities. And then at the Dhritarashtra's place, we all know what all she went through. So that's a very good question, Prabhu. I would also like to know the answer for that.
So in my mind, I was thinking about two personalities, but I don't have concrete evidence. It is spiritual strength, right? We know that she always relied on Bhishma. And I think, if I'm right, Vyasadeva also gave shelter, right, Prabhuji?
I remember Vidura Prabhu. I think
Vidura.
he was always there. I don't know, as you're mentioning, direct spiritual guidance, but definitely through all these troubles, Bhishma Dev was like, elderly person giving that kind of guidance, and Vidura was actually doing like practically encouragement and all that stuff was there. I heard in one of the lecture.
Yeah, they were there. They were there to support her. I agree. But I'm not sure if they were spiritual guides, and maybe Vidura was. I don't know.
Maybe we should ask Maharaj next time.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a very good question.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you for the question. More for us to contemplate and engage our senses in Krishna's thoughts. Okay, so if we don't have anything, we can stop here.
Prabhu, I made you as a host. Can you please stop the live streaming, Prabhu? I just stepped out. Live streaming and recording.
Okay, so just by stop recording?
Yeah, stop recording and stop streaming also, Prabhu. I think if you click on YouTube, it will stop.
Okay,